The day was one of shimmering twilight, where the horizon burned with golden hues, as if the heavens themselves were watching. The place was an ancient, barren wilderness, a desert that seemed to stretch into eternity. The air was thick with tension and anticipation, as though the universe itself held its breath. Lucifer, the morning star, strode across the sands. His once radiant form, now darkened yet still majestic, exuded an aura of defiance and power. His eyes burned like twin embers, filled with both pride and sorrow. He wore a flowing black robe that moved as though it had a life of its own, and his presence made the air around him feel heavy. Lucifer was not here to gloat or conquer, he was here for a meeting that had been destined since time began. On the other side of the desert stood Jesus, the Christ. He was clothed simply in a tunic of white, stained at the hem from his journey. His face was calm, serene, yet resolute. His eyes carried the weight of endless compassion and an unshakable strength that seemed to pierce through time and space. Around him, the air seemed lighter, as though creation itself leaned toward him in reverence. The two figures walked toward each other, their footsteps leaving imprints on the sands of eternity. As they came closer, the winds that had danced freely across the desert stilled, and silence enveloped the land. When they stood face to face, the contrast between them was stark yet harmonious, light and shadow, grace and rebellion, heaven and exile. Lucifer was the first to speak, his voice deep and resonant, carrying the weight of eons.
So, we meet again, Yeshua. The carpenter's son, the rabbi, the king of kings.
His lips curled into a faint, ironic smile.
It's been quite some time.
Jesus regarded him with a steady gaze. His voice, when he spoke, was soft yet carried the authority of eternity. Lucifer, the bearer of light. You have traveled far from what you once were. Why have you sought me here? Lucifer chuckled, a sound that was both melodic and haunting.
I sought you. No, it is you who has always sought me. Your kingdom, your mission, your cross, all of it revolves around what I began. I simply chose to meet you halfway this time.
Jesus tilted his head slightly, his expression unchanged. You speak of rebellion, of the fall, of sin. Yet you know as well as I do that my mission is not about you. It is about them. He gestured toward the horizon, as if encompassing all of humanity. Lucifer's smile faded, and his eyes darkened.
Them. Always them. The fragile, fleeting creations who betray you, doubt you, and curse you. And yet, you love them. Why?
Jesus stepped closer, his voice unwavering. Because they are loved by the Father. Because they are worth redeeming. Even when they stumble, even when they fall, they carry the breath of God within them. That is something you have never understood. Lucifer's gaze narrowed, and his tone became sharp.
Do not presume to lecture me, Yeshua. I was his brightest star. I sang his praises before you walked the earth. And yet, I was cast down for daring to dream of more. Tell me, is it truly love to demand servitude? Is it justice to punish ambition?
Jesus' expression softened, though his eyes remained resolute. Your ambition was not for the glory of the Father, but for yourself. You sought to ascend, not to lift others but to place yourself above all. Love does not seek its own, it sacrifices for others. For a moment, there was silence. Lucifer's jaw tightened, and his fiery eyes searched Jesus' face, as though looking for a weakness, a crack in his resolve. But he found none.
And what of me, Yeshua?
Lucifer asked, his voice quieter now, almost vulnerable.
Am I beyond redemption? Does your love extend even to the one who defied you most?
Jesus took another step forward, the distance between them now mere inches. His voice was filled with a profound sorrow and hope. The Father's love extends to all. Even to you, Lucifer. But redemption requires repentance, and repentance requires surrender. You hold the keys to your own chains. Lucifer laughed bitterly, shaking his head.
Surrender. to meal again after all this time. I cannot. I will not.
Jesus' eyes glistened with tears that did not fall. Then you choose your exile. Not because it was forced upon you, but because your pride will not let you return. Lucifer turned away, his form seeming to shimmer and blur as he began to fade into the shadows.
Perhaps. Or perhaps I choose freedom. We shall see, Yeshua. We shall see.
As he disappeared into the darkness, the winds returned, carrying the sands across the desert once more. Jesus stood alone, his gaze fixed on the horizon. He whispered softly, as though to the winds themselves, "The door is always open, my brother." And with that, he turned and walked back into the wilderness, his mission unchanged, his heart heavy yet steadfast. The meeting had ended, but the echoes of their words would linger for eternity.